Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizer for the invitation, which actually was to my boss, Mr. Evan Shedsta, which couldn't make it, and then I was asked to step in and give some perspective on how the new framework for aid to Africa can be made. We are the Norwegian-African Business Association, a very new organization, or I would say now Chamber of Commerce, the first of its kind in Norway, the only Chamber of Commerce, Norwegian-African Chamber of Commerce. And we like to think that we specialize in the new type of, I would say, aid organization, if we may call ourselves that, but otherwise we are very much capitalist, and it's interesting to be in a room full of idealists. So, anyway, much has been said already. I've prepared some slides. This is how we normally know Africa. Well, the agonies, the hopeless, World Food Program running full in Africa, as well as other UN organizations, which is have played the UN organizations have played a good role in Africa, assisting Africa. But the truth is, when we talk about poverty in Africa, when we focus on how to help Africa develop, do we take in consideration how old the continent is? That's one question. One of our previous speakers mentioned geographically it's an old one, but keep in mind Africa is only 60 years old. Much has been said through, around the colonial era, but straight in the 60s, when the continent gained independence, we were in the midst of two wars, which had its replication on the continent, and we couldn't focus on anything else than fighting between ourselves, of course, for the big powers at the time. We all know the Cold War. Now, of course, that brought bad governance, which also brought influence or influenced all issues around absolute poverty, high level of unemployment, inequality, lack of human capital structures, foreign debt, which according to NABA was at 300 billion in 2009. Wars, conflict, and uprising, 47 countries since independence. This is 47 out of 54 now. Bad or almost inexisting infrastructure, capital flights, lack of trade, and FDIs, foreign direct investments. Now, then there was this thing, is it the solution to this type of problem? Is aid the solution to the problem? Each of the rich countries' government has put in place their own agenda, of course, the organization. But how much of aid is given to Africa, or also to the entire developing world? The US give about 25 billion per year. Germany, 13, Luxembourg, and so on, and each of the other OECD countries, 0.7. Now, if we quantify that in $1 million, how much really is that, and how much is that gonna sort of develop the developing world, if we can be frank with ourselves? So, of course, we all know that Mr. Moyo will say that since the 60s, at least $1 trillion of development-related aid has been transferred from rich countries to Africa. That's a small amount of money. That's definitely, we cannot expect a continent of 54 countries to be developed by that. But there have been some positive development, positive cases. I will have to acknowledge that. The case of malaria, for example, which has been decreasing, that according to the World Health Organization. And of course, that's thanks to aid. So as an African here in Norway, I would say thank you for that. And the Millennium Development Goals. As United Nations Economic Council for Africa says, the continent has the highest improvement in terms of access to education for women. So, and Mr. Nanduzi says, of course, again, that there are positive trends within in achieving development goals. I would say there's still time. There's still much to do, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But otherwise, positive trends out there, and we should mention that. Something that is very ignored in this all this type of debate is remittances, which, according to the World Bank, migrants release over $600 billion a year to their respective countries. So it is far, far more than what many developing nations, mostly from African countries, receive in aid. So, short conclusion: aid has helped reduce child and maternal mortality, malaria, and other deadly diseases in Africa. Aid has helped African countries to score points on the Millennium Development Goals. Aid has helped maintain poor countries' budgets, which also have helped some governments to focus on key components such as education and health. But we should agree that after 60 years of aid in Africa, that it didn't lift the continent out of poverty. It didn't lift many of the 54 countries out of poverty. One of the previous speakers mentioned Botswana, which is also one of the success stories. That's one of the countries which has where well-managed aid has sort of paved the way to investment, which is going to be the next topic I want to talk about. So, should we try something else? Should we go capitalist? Should we go Wall Street? Or so this is a 2011 Human Development Index. 10 or 15 years ago, many of African countries have been have scored lower than what is actually on the map there. So there are some changes. Many African nations, countries such as Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Mauritius, Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, now Rwanda, Zambia, have moved from low-income countries to middle-income countries. So there are positive trends at least. So we believe that the first thing that we should try is connecting Africa to the rest of the world. This is a map from CWeb, Global Shipping Routes. You can easily see how disconnected Africa is. Of course, South Africa with Durban and Port Elizabeth. We have the Red Sea. Of course, that's not connected, just the way to ship out oil from the Middle East and oil from Nigeria. Basically, the rest is not connected. Many of African countries are, of course, landlocked, but we have a long coast which cannot be used to connect the rest of the continent. But of course, again, the problem is infrastructure. We do acknowledge that. So this is William Esther, who said we just give a picture of how disconnected Africa is from the global economy, which of course he mentioned rich country protectionism, lack of international trade, and of course lack of foreign direct investment. So we at the NABA, we say that the African lions are on the move. We proudly say that, as Africa actually is the next frontier. And of course, we mentioned before, 7 out of 10 fastest growing economies are sub-Saharan African countries. And that trend, according to the IMF, is going to continue until 2025. So we do encourage Norwegian investors and companies to really focus now on sub-Saharan Africa. There are many other European countries, the Dutch, the French, the British, the Germans, Of course, they give a little bit of aid, but they are also massively investing in Africa. So why Norwegian should do the same? Is it because we are so aid-oriented? Maybe. Of course, there are 10 growing economies. See with that. And the trend, now before, lions on the move, is it, we can ask ourselves, is it because of aid? I would say no. Because for the past 15 years, Chinese investments have been present in Africa. Chinese have invested massively in Africa, and that have created a growth which in turn have become attractive for some European countries, for some European investors. And it does also have lifted some people from poverty. The Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten, our knowledge for I think 2 years ago, that 100 million of Africans have the same life standard as an average Norwegian. Now, this is a continent of 1 billion people. It's a continent of 60 years of independence, characterized by wars, famine, disease, and everything. So if 100 million in the course of 60 years of existence, since of course we exist only since the independence, but also which have amassed 15 I would say, years of Chinese investments, have now growing. So we think that at least investments, it should be the way to go, and not only focus on the traditional aid, which is actually 0.7% of many of OECD's countries. That gives actually, who are donors. So this is the new picture now. The Economist, within 5 years from hopeless to Africa rising. In Norway, something new, the Norwegian-African Business Summits, running every year. And the media have turned and start giving positive image of Africa. And we like it. We really encourage them to do so. So why investments in Africa? I already said how 100 million African lives like an average Norwegian, and this is the richest country on earth. We can say that. So in contrast to aid, investments create jobs opportunities. I'm from the DRC, so I mentioned it. When in a community, the richest person in a community of, I would say 100,000 people, the richest person works for Oxfam. So should we only keep focusing on aid, Oxfam, or should we encourage small, medium, or large size investment? So, and then of course jobs generates economic growth, investments lift people from poverty to middle class, as it has been the case for Angola now, which after 27 years of war, with little investment, have moved from being poor to middle income status. So we believe that investment should be the way to go. So Ban Ki-moon said that only 4 African countries were embroiled in armed conflicts in 2010, compared with 14 at the end of 1990s. But of course, Mali is now the problem, but still conflicts are no longer there. And if you think of Democratic Republic of Congo, please, it's only 5% of the national territory which is embroiled in unending conflict. The rest of the country is perfectly stable. So we still have those ideas. When you say Congo, oh, don't go there, but you say, so media should have so focused on those positive stories. So this is Ban Ki-moon who said that. And in 22 countries of sub-Saharan Africa, the HIV incidence rates declined by more than 25% within the course of 9 years. So this is UN's report. So there are all these positive trends that are we should encourage, and for any of you here with a little time of capital, please, Africa is the place. So and the most under-communicated news flash is Africa is currently one of the world's fastest growing regions of the world. Sustainable investments. We at NABA, we believe that the CSR and local contents are definitely the way to go. So if you want to invest in Africa, please don't go Wall Street. Don't go crazy capitalist. We still have some of idealism within us. After all, we are previous students from also Agder and also. So we encourage our members, Norwegian companies, to respect international laws on trade and human rights. And one of the good example, I know Statoil is sometimes the media have been unfair to Statoil, but we know that they've been doing something good in Angola, which a case is that employing the local staff. So now, should aid go out and we put investments in? On a long term, yes. But as for now, since we still are climbing, we hope to really fully take off within the next decade. Aid, for us, aid should focus on education primarily. The environment, of course, because at the end of the day, climate change concerns us all, and the forest in the Congo is not only for the Congo or the country and the region, but it also has repercussions to Norway and, of course, the rest of the world. Education, but education and transfer of technology, and a type of aid that will pave the way for future investment, because any investors will need qualified workforce. Any investment will need good, sustainable infrastructure. That's where education and transfer of technology implies here. And of course, why education? It leads to innovation, knowledge transmission. A good example is that Norway takes many students from Africa. You have this exchange thing. You come here, you learn something new, and then hopefully go back and then try to teach, of course, to your country what you learn. So, natural resource management. Africa is basically resource-based. Most of African economies are resource-based, and if you learn most about how to manage the resources, definitely the growth will keep going up. Self-discipline, of course. You may say many things about corruption, but at the end of the day, it's about self-discipline if you want to fight that one. Modernity, all those things. Consciousness, many students, you invest in tertiary education, you definitely don't want to wrap up the constitution and then try a third mandate to face unrest. So education will improve life standard, decreases of child labor, entrepreneurship, which is indeed, of course, is encouraged investments. It is attractive to foreign investments. One of the myths of not investing in Africa is that, of course, as I mentioned, not enough qualified labor. So transparency and criticism to the states, insight and knowledge, and my favorite, aspiration to democracy and the rule of law. So this is Trond Giske with finishing remarks. The Norwegian-African Business Summit 2011, saying, for the past decades, Norway's relationship with the African continent has been characterized by aid. Now, our job is to contribute to Africa's progress by focusing on investment, business, and trade. Thank you very much. So.